On August 20, 1989, Lyle and Erik Menendez, then 21 and 18 years old, walked into the den of their Beverly Hills mansion and fired more than a dozen shotgun rounds at their parents, Jose, a music executive, and Mary Louise, a former beauty queen who went by the name Kitty. Jose, 45, was shot at point blank range in the back of the head and was struck 3 more times in the arms and legs. Kitty, 47, was shot 4 times in the head and 5 other times across her body. Kitty was born Mary Louise Anderson on October 14, 1941, to parents Charles and May Anderson. The youngest of 4 children, she had a middle-class upbringing in Oaklawn, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. But her life was far from perfect. Her father, who owned a heating and air conditioning business, was abusive toward May and their children. The couple eventually divorced while Kitty was still a child, causing her to become depressed and withdrawn. She struggled to make friends and carried resentment towards her father for years. Still, this traumatic circumstance didn't stop Mary Louise, eventually nicknamed Kitty, from having big dreams. She aspired to be an actor and enrolled at Southern Illinois University to study communications. There she met her future husband, Jose Menendez, whom she married in 1963. Both of their families were opposed to the marriage, his because her parents were divorced, hers because of Jose's Cuban heritage. In their early married life, she was an elementary school teacher, but after giving birth to her children, Lyle, born January 10, 1968, and Erik, born November 27, 1970, she became a full-time homemaker. As her husband climbed up the corporate ladder, their life looked perfect on the surface. Intelligent, attractive, charming in public, Kitty appeared to be the ideal wife and mother. However, those who came to know her described her as a high-strung woman who had great difficulty coping with stress, and her husband's repeated extramarital affairs drove her to despair. Kitty coped with her problems by consuming increasing amounts of alcohol and prescription pills, and some of her friends feared she had become dependent on them. In 1987, she attempted suicide, ingesting a bottle of sleeping pills over an 8-year affair between Jose and a woman in New York. Kitty attempted suicide 3 times over her husband's repeated infidelity. She recovered, but she and Jose continued to have marital problems, and their relationships with their sons became increasingly strained. Jose relocated the family to Los Angeles, California in 1986, and later Beverly Hills in 1988. Kitty struggled to adjust. She preferred to remain in New Jersey, but she tried to support her husband. She was always very much at his side, part of his vision, dedicated to the cause, whatever the cause was. Jose Menendez was born in Havana, Cuba on May 6, 1944. He came to the United States as a penniless teenager and was determined to succeed. His father was a soccer player who owned an accounting firm, while his mother was a star swimmer and a member of the country sports Hall of Fame. In Cuba, Jose was spoiled by his mother and developed a reputation as a troublemaker. He was the only boy, and his mother adored him and emphasized his machoism and his male image, so much so that he became a little bit of a bully. After Castro seized power in 1959, following the Cuban Revolution, Jose's parents decided to send their son to the United States to escape the fierce political climate. Jose at first settled in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, where he lived in a cousin's attic. Unable to speak English, he worked hard to learn the language and maintain his grades in high school. Like his mother, Jose was a proficient swimmer and was more determined than ever to succeed in America. He picked up his first professional job at the Coopers and Lybrand accounting firm. One of his clients, Lyons Container Service in Illinois, was so impressed by his work that the company hired him to become its controller. Within 3 years, Jose was company president. At age 35, he became the executive vice president of U.S. operations for the car rental company Hertz. A year later, RCA transferred Jose to its records division, and he was eventually named chief operating officer. Jose expanded the company's Latin music catalog and helped notable groups including Duran Duran, Eurythmics, and the boy band Menendez. On August 18, 1989, 2 days prior to murdering their parents, Lyle and Erik went to several gun stores in Southern California to buy handguns. But due to issues with Lyle's California driver's license and a 2-week waiting period mandated by gun laws, the brothers decided to purchase shotguns at a Big Five sporting goods store in San Diego, California, where Erik used a stolen driver's license from Lyle's friend. Immediately after the killings, both brothers remained in the house for a few minutes, expecting the police to respond due to the noise of the gunshots. They finally left to dispose of their clothes that were stained with blood and buried the shotguns. They then went to a movie theater and attempted to purchase tickets for the film Batman to use as their alibi, but abandoned the plan due to the timestamp on the ticket stub. So instead, they headed to the Taste of Los Angeles Festival at Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. After returning home and finding no police at the home, Lyle called 911 saying he and Erik had just returned home to find their parents slain.
Beverly Hills emergency.
Yes, please.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my...
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Hey, man,
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
102 response. 722 North Elmont Park.
What happened? Hey, stand up,
I have a hysterical person on. We're trying to get screened further. Other units responding. Is the person still there?
What happened? We have units around. What happened? Who shot who?
I don't hear anything. I just came home.
You came home and found who shot?
Mom and Dad. You know if they're still in the house, the people that did the shooting.
Get away from him. Okay. Hey, let me talk to Erik. Who is the person that was shot?
My mom and my dad.
Your mom and dad?
My mom and my dad.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we're on our way over there with an ambulance.
Okay, I gotta go.
Okay.
Oh.
Hello, this is police department.
Yes.
Okay, I want you to come outside. Okay, just come out the front door and
my brother.
Lyle and Erik told investigators unknown intruders were responsible for the murders, framing it as a potential mob killing. Police initially investigated this claim, but grew suspicious of the brothers' lavish spending of their multi-million-dollar inheritance and their hiring of a computer expert to delete their father's recently updated will. 1 week after the killings, Lyle had made a sudden trip back from Princeton to destroy something in the family computer. A computer expert hired by Lyle testified he was hired to ensure deletion of a new will Jose had prepared that may have left less to his sons. Lyle brought Chuck Springs Street Cafe, a buffalo wing restaurant in Princeton, New Jersey, as well as 3 Rolex watches and a Porsche. Erik purchased a custom vehicle and hired a full-time tennis coach and competed in a series of tournaments overseas. They also dined extravagantly and took overseas trips to the Caribbean and London. Together, they spent approximately $700,000 before their arrest. Erik eventually confessed to his psychiatrist about killing his parents, who then told his mistress. The psychiatrist claimed that Lyle threatened him and violated doctor-patient privilege. So, for protection, he began recording his sessions with Lyle and Erik. After breaking up with his mistress, she went to the police and informed them about the brothers' involvement in the murders. Lyle was arrested on March 8, 1990 outside the Beverly Hills home, while Erik turned himself in 3 days later after returning to Los Angeles from Israel. Lyle and Erik went through 2 trials before they were convicted. Prosecutors alleged Lyle and Erik killed their wealthy parents for financial gain, while the defense argued the brothers acted in self-defense after enduring years of sexual abuse by their father. Meanwhile, their mother was described as an enabling, selfish, and mentally unstable alcoholic and drug addict who encouraged her husband's behavior and was also violent towards her sons. The first trial was in 1994, and a mistrial was declared after 2 separate juries, one for each brother, deadlocked over a verdict. The second trial, less publicized, began in 1995. This time with just one jury for the both. And in 1996, Lyle and Erik, now 56 and 53, were found guilty of first-degree murder. Judge Stanley Westberg ruled evidence and testimony about the brothers' allegations of sexual abuse would be inadmissible in the second trial, citing irrelevance. Although the death penalty was a possibility, they each received 2 consecutive life sentences without parole. Lyle and Erik asked to be housed in the same prison when their sentences began in 1996. However, at that time, prison officials preferred to separate people who committed crimes together. Then, on February 22, 2018, Lyle was transferred from Northern California's Mills Creek State Prison to San Diego's Richard J. Donovan's Correctional Facility, where Erik had been incarcerated since 2013.
Reaction to the reunion of 2 of America's most infamous killers. The Menendez brothers now housed at the same San Diego prison.
And that means the murderers are seeing each other for the first time in more than 20 years. Our 10 News reporter Matt Boone is live outside Donovan State Prison. And Matt, their aunt is talking tonight about what it's like for them to be reunited.
Yeah, Steve, Kimberly, you'll remember at the time this trial actually ripped the remaining family members apart, many of them not wanting to believe the accusations of sexual assault against the brothers' father. But tonight, that aunt speaking to ABC News, she says after all this time, she's happy the boys finally get to be together again.
It's marvelous that they are able to look at each other and love each other.
After nearly 22 years, Lyle and Erik Menendez met again for the first time in an emotional reunion.
Lyle burst into tears, and Erik burst into tears, and they hugged each other for several minutes.
The brothers last saw each other in 1996, at the time fearing it could be the last.
There's a good probability I will never see him again.
The 2 had been sentenced to life in prison for shooting and killing their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in 1989 at their Beverly Hills home. During the explosive trial, the defense argued their father, a wealthy business executive in Los Angeles, had sexually abused the boys for years. But the prosecution painted it as an attempt by the brothers to inherit the family's multi-million-dollar fortune. With their house in the same building at Donovan, psychologist Eric Fox says they can expect to see each other often.
They are now able to interact probably pretty regularly. They probably have chow at the same time. They probably spend all their yard time together, or at least they can.
And we did speak to a former San Diego district attorney who says living situations like this for family members is somewhat unusual, but after petitioning, a spokesperson for the Department of Corrections said they could no longer find a reason to keep the 2 brothers apart.
The 2 burst into tears immediately when they saw each other. Before their reunion, the brothers hadn't seen each other since September the 10th, 1996. only able to communicate via letters, now the brothers can meet during exercise, recreation, and meal periods. Thanks to their good behavior and efforts in prison jobs and classes, Lyle and Erik now live in a non-designated programming facility at Donovan. This unit, known as Echo Yard, offers inmates more freedom, rehabilitation, and educational programming. Echo Yard prisoners take yoga and art classes, study different academic subjects, and join groups to address issues like anger management or alcoholism. They are both categorized as Group A prisoners who have the most privileges to receive visits and make calls within California's correction system. Lyle and Erik have filed many appeals over the years. On February 27, 1998, the California Court of Appeal upheld the brothers' murder convictions, and on May 28, 1998, the Supreme Court of California declined to review the case. Both brothers filed habeas corpus petitions with the Supreme Court of California, which was denied in 1999. Having exhausted their appeal remedies in the state court, they filed separate habeas corpus petitions in the United States District Court. On March 4, 2003, a magistrate judge recommended the denial of the petitions, and the district court adopted the recommendation. The brothers then decided to appeal to the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. On September 7, 2005, a 3-judge panel denied both their habeas corpus petitions. Then, in May of 2023, attorneys for Lyle and Erik filed a petition that asked for the Menendez brothers' convictions to be vacated. In the past several years, new evidence had come to light that may prove favorable for the Menendez brothers in the review of their case. Roy Russacello, a former member of the band Menendez, publicly revealed that when he was 14 years old, Jose had sexually assaulted him at the Menendez family home in New Jersey. Menendez was a Puerto Rican boy band formed in 1977 by music producer Edgardo Diaz. The original lineup featured 5 boys in the early teens and became an international sensation by the early 1980s. Once boys reached age 15 or 16, they would be replaced by younger members. Roy, who joined Menendez at age 13, stated Jose, then an executive at RCA Records, had drugged and raped him. In addition, a letter Erik had sent to a cousin 8 months before he shot his parents was found in 2018. Erik had written, "I have been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in." This letter is proof that the abuse allegations were not made up. The letter was never presented at either trial, and that it was discovered in storage within the last few years by Andy's mother. Andy died in 2003. The recent petition, which included Erik's letter and a signed declaration from Roy, lingered in the legal system for more than a year. However, just a few weeks ago, the Los Angeles County District Attorney, George Gascón, announced on October the 3rd that his office will review what he said is new evidence alleging the brothers were sexually abused by their father. The prosecutor's review opens the door for the chance that the brothers could be retried or even released. Many members of the Menendez family have been supportive of their release, but not everyone in their family agrees. Milton Anderson, one of Kitty's brothers, told the New York Times in 2023 that the brothers should not be set free. "They do not deserve to walk on the face of this earth after killing my sister and my brother-in-law," he said.
Tarde. My name is Ana Maria Baralt. I am the niece of Jose Menendez. I stand before you today not just as a member of the Menendez family, but as someone who believes in truth, justice, and healing. Before I get started, I just want to say that I know this is an election season, But for us, this is not a political issue. This is about truth, justice, and healing. On behalf of our whole family, it is my honor to formally introduce our new coalition, Justice for Erik and Lyle. Like so many others, I struggled to process the events of that fateful August day and the loss that I felt. Over time, it became clear that there were two other victims there on that day, my cousins Lyle and Erik. Lyle and Erik would continue to be victimized. They would be victims of a system that wouldn't hear them. And they would be victims of a culture that was not ready to listen. They would be mocked. They would be called cold-blooded killers, left to rot in jail and denied any hope of redemption. If Lyle and Erik's case were heard today, with the understanding we now have about abuse and PTSD, there is no doubt in my mind that their sentencing would have been very different. And yet, despite their circumstances, they have chosen a life of light. Without hope of release, they persevered. They have sought to better themselves and serve as a support and inspiration for survivors all over the world. Their continued incarceration serves no rehabilitative purpose. It's time to recognize the injustice they've suffered and allow them the second chance they deserve. Now here we are, both sides of the family united, sharing a new bond of hope. Hope that with the re-examination of their case, a new outcome will be reached. Hope that this 34-year nightmare will end and that we will be reunited as a family. I am here to ask the District Attorney's Office to take into account the full picture, the truth that was hidden for so long. Lyle and Erik deserve a chance to heal, and our family deserves a chance to heal with them. Please join us. Visit www.justiceforerikandlyle.org and sign our petition. And if you'll indulge me, I have two more statements to read. The first is from my mother, 85 years old, Terry Beralt, the sister of Jose Menendez. She can't be with us today due to health challenges, but she sent me this. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person to support my nephews, Lyle and Erik. I begin chemo soon and my doctor says no flights. I need to be strong. I wish to make it clear that I stand firmly with this family. I am Lyle's godmother, and I love them both very, very much. My nephews have spent 3 decades in prison helping others. I have seen great growth in them. Even the law enforcement supervisors and corrections have written letters to the court asking for their resentencing and release. Millions across this country agree. I implore the District Attorney's Office to end our prolonged suffering and release Lyle and Erik back to our family. 35 years is such a long time. My prayer is that I live long enough to see my nephews again and to hug them once more. I have another statement, and this is written by a family member of Marta Cano and Andy Cano, that Andy, the one to whom the letter was written. This is written by one of Marta's children. Thank you for giving our family the opportunity to express our thoughts during this pivotal time in Lyle and Erik's case. Our family's tragedy has always been very public and has been extensively covered by many media platforms. Marta and Andy Cano would have wanted to speak today, but unfortunately they are both unable to do so. Marta is in memory care, but she spent decades supporting Lyle and Erik. Sadly, we lost Andy shortly before his 30th birthday, and we miss him every day. Both Marta and Andy deeply loved Lyle and Erik. They both believed in justice, but they also believed in the second chances and forgiveness. It has been 35 years since this happened, and we feel enough penance has been paid. It is time for them to be released and for all of us to move on and continue healing as a family. Again, if you want to help, please join us at justiceforlyleanderik.org and sign our petition. With that, I'm going to be followed by several members of the Anderson family. First will be Alan Anderson. He's the nephew of Kitty Menendez. Kitty Menendez. And the second will be Karen, the niece of Kitty Menendez. But first, Joan Vandermillen, sister of Kitty Menendez. Please join us.
Please know that I'm nervous and full of emotions. I never thought this day would come. I am Kitty's sister. I stand here today with a heavy heart and also with hope and justice and understanding. We have received such an outpouring support in recent weeks, which led us to launch this formal initiative. For many years, I struggled with terms with what happened to my sister's family. It was a nightmare none of us could have imagined. But as details of Lyle and Erik's abuse came to light, it became clear that their actions, while tragic, were the desperate response of two boys trying to survive the unspeakable cruelty of their father. As their aunt, I had no idea of the extent of the abuse they suffered at the hands of my brother-in-law. None of us did. But looking back, I can see the fear and tension that their father had instilled on them. They were just children. Children who could have been protected and were instead brutalized in the most horrific ways. The truth is, Lyle and Erik were failed by the very people who should have protected them, by their parents, by the system, by society at large. When they stood trial, the whole world was ready to believe that the boys could be raped. Was not ready, excuse me, not ready. The whole world was not ready to believe boys could be raped, or that young men could be victims of sexual violence. Today we know better. We know that abuse has long-lasting effects, and victims of trauma sometimes act in ways that are very difficult to understand. In the years since their conviction, society's understanding of sexual abuse and its psychological impact has grown significantly. We understand that a person doesn't need to fit a specific mold, whether it's gender or socioeconomic status, in order to experience abuse. In their case, if it were tried today, the evidence of their father's abuse would not only be admitted in court, it would provide essential context for why they acted as they did. No jury today would issue such a harsh sentence without taking their trauma into account. Lyle and Erik have already paid a heavy price, discarded by a system that failed to recognize their pain. They have grown, they have changed, and they have become better men despite everything that they've been through. It's time to give them the opportunity to live the rest of their lives free from the shadow of their past. While I recognize it is election season, this isn't about us or about the politics. It's about finding the truth, delivering justice, creating space for healing. I want to thank everyone who has reached out to our family in recent days and weeks, asking how they can help. Today we have an answer. Please sign our petition at www.justiceforerikandlyle.org and urge the district attorney's office, no matter who holds the DA position, to consider all the evidence, both old and new, and to bring together justice for the family. And thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sorry I'm so nervous, I can't help it.
Next we have Alan Anderson, nephew of Kitty Menendez.
Hello, and thank you everybody for being here. Hello, my name is Brian A. Anderson Jr. I am the Kitty of Menendez. I'm Kitty Menendez's nephew. I am proud to be a member of this family and to help spearhead this formal effort to organize and galvanize all the support we have received. Together, I believe we can finally bring justice for my cousins, Lyle and Erik. I've known Lyle and Erik my whole life. I can tell you without a doubt that they are not the villains they've been portrayed as. They were boys, young, scared, and abused by their father in ways no child should ever experience. You, the media, focused so much on their actions, but they never were told and never were able to tell the full story of their abuse that drove them to such desperate measures. When I think about the pain and suffering they endured, it breaks my heart to know that the system failed them so profoundly. They tried to protect themselves the only way they knew how. But instead of being seen as victims, they were vilified. Their father's abuse was dismissed, their trauma ignored, and their truth mocked by millions. Today, we know that trauma can lead to actions that, while difficult to understand, are rooted in survival. Lyle and Erik acted out of fear, but the jury never heard the full story. If their trial were held today, their father's abuse would be front and center in their defense, and I believe the outcome would be very different. Lyle and Erik are not the same people they were 35 years ago. They've shown that they are more than their past. They are survivors and deserve a chance to rebuild their lives. They are no longer a threat to society. Please do not misconstrue this to be political. Justice should prevail and transcend politics. I am asking the district attorney's office, regardless of who the DA is or becomes, to reconsider their case with the knowledge we now have about their abuse. Lyle and Erik deserve a second chance to heal, a chance to be free, and to live the rest of their lives without the shadow of their past hanging over them. I firmly believe that if they were to come to my house, knock on my door, I would answer that door, I would welcome them in with huge hugs, my wife would make them a dinner, and I'd give them a pillow and a place to sleep. Thank you for being here today, supporting justice for Lyle and Erik. Please go to our website, learn the truth about their story, and sign our petition. Thank you.
Please welcome Karen Vandermullen, niece of Kitty Menendez.
Good afternoon. There's a lot of you, and I'm very nervous. My name is Karen Vandermullen Copley. I am Kitty Menendez's niece, and I'm here today speaking out because I have believed for many years that the truth needs to be known about what really happened to my cousins Lyle and Erik. From the beginning, I believed Lyle and Erik were victims of their father's abuse. I grew up knowing and feeling something wasn't right. The feeling in their house and the father-son interactions were just off. But it was not until the first trial that the full horror of what they had to live through came to light. My sister Diane had evidence of their abuse. That was not even allowed to be presented at the trial. I cannot help but think of how things would be different if the world had known the truth back then, or if they had been the Menendez sisters. Adults of abuse have difficulty getting out of their situations, and yet these were two young boys who were never allowed to make decisions on their own. They lived in constant fear and were unable to make any other decisions than the sexual violence that they were taught at the very hands of people who were supposed to love and protect them. Their sometimes misunderstood behaviors were cries for help that many of us wished we had realized and responded to far sooner. What happened is tragic, but I forgive my cousins. I have forgiven them forever. because I know they were acting out of fear and desperation. These were children, just 6 and 8 years old, who didn't understand their own bodies. No child should ever have to endure that kind of pain. This abuse trapped them. It was painful and it terrified them. Their father's abuse shattered their lives and the family's lives, and the courts failed them, failed to recognize their trauma, compounding this tragedy. We live in a time now where we understand how abuse can shape a person's actions, male or female. We live in a time now where we understand what trauma does to the brain development of a child. If Lyle and Erik's trial happened today, the outcome would be drastically different. The evidence of their father's abuse would have been a central part of their defense. And it's very likely they would not have received such harsh sentences. Lyle and Erik have spent most of their lives in prison, paying for their actions. During that time, they have become supporters and advocates for children who have suffered sexual violence. I believe they have suffered enough. I ask the district attorneys to take into account the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I believe they have paid for their crimes, and we as a family have all suffered enough. We are here for them and ready to support Erik and Lyle after release. This is a time for truth and justice, and the time for the path to healing. It is time for Erik and Lyle to come home. We are here for them. Please visit our website and sign our petition. We would love nothing more than for our mom to be able to wrap her arms around Erik and Lyle outside prison walls before she is unable to do so.
Both brothers are currently married. Tammy, I'm going to probably say this name wrong too. Please forgive me. Tammy Sockelman watched Erik's first trial and wrote to Erik. The pen pals met in prison in 1997 and got married at Folsom State Prison in 1999. Lyle married Rebecca Sneed in the maximum security visiting area at Mule Creek Prison in 2003. It was his second prison wedding. His first marriage to former model Anna Erkison ended in divorce on April 1st, 2001, after she discovered that Lyle was cheating on her with another woman. Now, the brothers are hoping that the new evidence will reopen their case and set them free. They have continued to insist they were sexually abused by their father. So just to give you a little bit update on the Menendez home, the notorious Beverly Hills mansion where the Menendez brothers brutally murdered their parents has new owners. The mansion sat on the market for several years after the murders, its grim history making it difficult to sell. Over the decades, the house passed through the hands of several notable owners, including Murder, She Wrote creator William Link and telecommunications executive Samuel D. Luck, who was the most recent seller. Just a few months ago, the home was sold for a staggering $17 million. The new owners have been revealed as the wealthy Lahajani family, a prominent Iran American clan with significant investments in Los Angeles real estate. Now, the property, which has changed hands multiple times since 1989, is now undergoing extensive renovations. The new family, who acquired the house in a private sale in March of 2024, exactly 28 years after the brothers were convicted, has not commented publicly on their decision to purchase the infamous property. I remember this case like the back of my hand, but never looked fully into it until now. Personally, I agree the brothers should be released. I don't agree with them killing their parents whatsoever, but I do understand that they felt that this was their only way out. They had been controlled their entire life by their father, and the abuse was horrific. Do I think the abuse was real? Absolutely, especially after I watched the trials and the testimonies of Lyle and Erik. Their emotions while on the stand was real. Their tears was not fake, and it actually showed the hurt and pain that both suffered during the abuse. 35 years of time served should justify the killings of their parents. I pray they are set free immediately after the hearing.
We have some family members sent on this side as well.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And before I begin speaking, I want to also introduce some other people that are here with me, and I hope I'm pronouncing the names right because I've seen handwritten part of it. But I have Ana Maria Barral, Jose Menendez, Jose Menendez and niece Karen Vandermolen, and Kitty's niece. They're all here with us. Also with us here is Brock Lunsford. He's the Assistant Head Deputy for the Post-Litigation Conviction Unit, and Nancy Cervier, who is the Deputy District Attorney in charge of the Resentencing Unit. Let me begin by telling you that this is a case where we've had many people in this office spend a great deal of time reviewing the case. I have to tell you unequivocally that we don't have a universal agreement. There are people in the office that strongly believe that the Menendez brothers should stay in prison the rest of their life, and they do not believe that they were molested. And there are people in the office that strongly believe that they should be released immediately and that they were in fact molested. I have to tell you that after a very careful review of all the arguments that were made for people on both sides of this equation, I came to a place where I believe that under the law, resentencing is appropriate, and I am going to recommend that to a court tomorrow. What that means in this particular case is that we're going to recommend to the court that the life without the possibility of parole be removed, and that they will be sentenced for murder, which, because there are two murders involved, that will be 50 years to life. However, because of their age, under the law, since they were under 26 years of age at the time that these crimes occurred, they will be eligible for parole immediately. The teams that have worked in this, on the resentencing side of it, have spent literally probably hundreds of hours by now looking at this case. These cases were originally presented on the habeas side of it, which I'll explain in a moment what that is, last year, and then the request for a prosecutor-initiated resentencing occurred earlier this year. And there have been people in this office working in these cases from the very beginning, as well as many other cases that we have. The reason why I'm here today and why I came in front of all of you about 10 days ago is because there was a more recent documentary about the case that again brought a tremendous amount of public attention. And we know there have been other documentaries, so this is not the first, this is the more recent one. And frankly, our office got flooded with requests for information. And even though this case was already scheduled to be heard in late November, I decided to move this forward because, quite frankly, we did not have enough resources to handle all the requests, and one of the things that I thrive to do in this office is to be very transparent in everything that we do. In this case, we review the prison files. And you have to understand that the way the process works, when you're talking about a resentencing under the law, it really focuses not necessarily on what the original crimes were, but it focuses on, has the person been rehabilitated, number one, and number two, can they be released safely into the community? Under that rubric, since I've been in office, we have resentenced over 300 people, including 28 for murder. Only 4 have reoffended. If that was a regular recidivism rate in this country, we would be the safest nation in the world, but we know that it's not. In fact, somewhere between 40 and 50% of the people that go to prison reoffend and get rearrested. And that's why we have so many problems. However, when you look at the case of the Menendez brothers, you see 2 very young people, one was 19 and the other was 21, when they committed these horrible acts. And I want to underline, they were horrible acts. There is no excuse for murder, and I will never imply that what we're doing here is to excuse that behavior, because even if you get abused, the right path is to call the police, seek help. But I understand also how sometimes people get desperate. We often see women, for instance, that have been battered for years, and sometimes they will murder their abuser out of desperation. And I do believe that the brothers were subjected to a tremendous amount of dysfunction in the home and molestation. But they went to prison for life without the possibility of parole, which meant that certainly under the law at that time, they had no hopes of ever getting out. They could have done what many other people do, which is basically said, you know what, I'm here for the rest of my life, so I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to misbehave, I'm going to join gangs, I'm going to live the life of the prison. But they never did that. To the contrary, even though they didn't think that they would ever be left free, they engaged in a different journey. A journey of redemption and a journey of rehabilitation. And often the people that begin their journey of rehabilitation and redemption in prison is often very internal. And what they do, and one of our lawyers pointed out this today, is usually the path is people try to further their education, do things for self-improvement, which the brothers have done, by the way. But it's more unique, or less usual, I guess, when people not only do that, but they also begin to engage in ways to make life for others better. And in this case, the brothers have been doing so for a very long time. Creating groups to deal with how to address untreated trauma. Creating groups to deal with other inmates that have physical disabilities and may be treated differently. Even in one case, Lyle negotiating for other inmates as to the conditions that they live under during prison. And all this was done by 2 young people, now they're not as young, they had no hopes of ever getting out of prison. They have been in prison for nearly 35 years. I believe that they have paid their debt to society, and the system provides a vehicle for their case to be reviewed by a parole board, and if the parole concurs with my assessment, and it will be their decision, they will be released accordingly. I must underline, however, this case will be filed in court tomorrow. The final decision will be made by the judge. Court has to agree with my conclusion that they deserve to be resentenced. It is very possible that there may be members of this office that will be present in court opposing the resentencing. And they have a right to do so. And we encourage those that disagree with us to speak, and the court is the appropriate place to do it. We certainly feel we're very sure not only that the brothers have rehabilitated and that they will be safe to be reintegrated in our society, but that they have paid their dues, not only for the crimes that they committed, but because of all the other things they have done to improve the life of so many others. So, again, we will be filing for resentencing tomorrow. We're seeking that they would be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, as opposed to life without the possibility of parole, which is they currently have. That means that they would have 50 years to life because there were 2 murders. But because of the age upon which they were convicted, under 26, under current law, that means they're eligible for youthful parole. I think there is also important to have some introspection today, because I think that often, for cultural reasons, we don't believe victims of sexual assault, whether they're women, whether they're men. We saw in our first trial, which, by the way, they were tried twice. The first trial hung, meaning the jury could not come to a conclusion, and in fact about half of the jury wanted to convict them of manslaughter, which, if that were have been the case, they would have been off prison a long time ago. And then there was a second trial, and then they were convicted of murder with special circumstances, which led to the life without the possibility of parole. But it's salient to understand that our own implicit and sometimes explicit bias around sexual abuse and sexual assaults often leads us to severe injustices in our community. And I want to speak to those that are victims of sexual assault now, whether you're a man or a woman. Know that we're here for you. If you're a victim of sexual assault in this community, and by that we're talking about LA County, not just LA City, you can come for help. Whether you're prepared to prosecute or not, we will be here for you. We have services for you. And if you're prepared to move forward with the prosecution, we will evaluate it as we do any other case. And if we believe that the evidence is there to present a credible case in front of a jury that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, we would proceed accordingly. You do not have to suffer alone. You don't have to keep it to yourself. And help is here unconditionally. Yes. Anna Maria, you're going to talk next? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Ana Maria Baralt, and I'm the niece of Jose Menendez. Erik and Menendez are my cousins. I would also like to acknowledge the other family members here, some standing, some seated. Joan Vandermolen is here, Kitty's sister, as well as Diane Vandermolen Hernandez, Kitty's niece. Thank you for joining me, everyone. Today is a day filled with hope for our family. We are here because District Attorney Gascón has taken a brave and necessary step forward by recommending a resentencing for Lyle and Erik. The DA's decision reflects the truth that is hidden for so long, and I am grateful for his leadership in making this choice. We stand united in our hope and gratitude. Together we can make sure that Erik and Lyle receive the justice they deserve, and finally come home. Thank you to District Attorney George Gascón for his courage and leadership. This step gives us all hope that the truth will finally be heard and that Lyle and Erik can begin to heal from the trauma of their past. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Maria.
Yeah. This is the niece of Kitty Menendez, Joan Vandermolen.
Hi, thank you for coming. We are here today because District Attorney Gascón has taken a brave and compassionate step forward by recommending resentencing for my cousins, Erik and Lyle. And we wish to offer our deepest gratitude to DA Gascón. This decision is not just a legal matter. It is a recognition of the abuse my cousins endured, and we are grateful for the DA's leadership in putting justice over politics. We know this wasn't an easy decision, but is the right one. This is about truth, justice, and healing. It is time for Lyle and Erik to come home. And I ask all of you to join us in this fight for justice. We stand united in our hope and in our gratitude. Together we can make sure that Erik and Lyle receive the justice they deserve and finally come home. Thank you again to District Attorney George Gascón for his courage and leadership. This step gives us all hope that truth will finally be heard and Erik and Lyle can begin to heal from the horrors of their past. We hope this will also shed light and increase awareness and help others who have been victimized by sexual violence. Thank you all so much for being here today. We are grateful for everyone's support.
Is there anyone else speaking?
No, that's it.
Okay. Okay, and I apologize. I'm reading notes here and I'm trying to understand all the notes. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain, so you go tomorrow, you file a case for resentencing, then what happens after? Are the brothers going to be there tomorrow, and when is the role of the parole board going to come in?
Right, and you know what? I'm going to actually have the people that are handling the case walk you through all of it. The brothers will not be there tomorrow. The role of parole board comes later, but Nancy, why don't you walk everybody through?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll file our...
Identify yourself, please.
My name is Nancy Thaberge. I'm the deputy in charge of the resentencing unit. This is Brock Lunsford, assistant head deputy of the post-conviction litigation division. So what will happen is tomorrow we will file the actual petition requesting resentencing with the legal arguments and accompanying exhibits as to why we think it's appropriate. It's just a filing. No one's going to physically be in the courtroom. From there, we'll also serve the defense with our motion and our paperwork so that they'll have their copies. And from there, we will coordinate with the defense to set up a court date with the court so that the petition can be heard. Now, whether or not that's a setting or a hearing will be decided between us and the defense and the court once everybody gets an idea of what we've filed. Then from there at the hearing, the defense can either decide to have the defendants, the Menendez brothers, physically brought into court. They can ask that the individuals appear by video or audio WebEx, kind of a Zoom participation, which we all kind of adapted to because of COVID. And then from there, we will do the hearing and submit all the written and legal and oral arguments and any evidence that needs to be admitted at the time, and then the court will rule at that point. But we don't have that court date yet because we're just starting the process tomorrow. But it's our intention to have that go forward before the habeas, because if the judge grants it, that may impact the defense's decision to proceed on the habeas. So we're gonna try it just as a matter of economy of time to stack it one before the other.
Now, have the brothers found out about this in real time, or were they told about this beforehand, or what was their reaction if they were?
No, this was...
No, this is actually the family was only invited to come. They were not aware what the final decision was until a few minutes ago. The brothers may be actually seeing you guys on TV or social media, but no one knew other than a very small number of people in this office. And by the way, I should tell you that actually the final decision was just made about an hour ago.
Parole board after a judge ruled? If the judge rules in favor.
Right, then it goes back to the prison system, and then the parole system takes over that. That's
And
correct.
would there be a parole or probationary period? Would they have to live in a halfway house or simply be released if they're allowed to be released?
You know, those are really completely entirely up to the parole board. Place. We'll try.
What was the factor that made the final decision? You said the final decision was just made. Was it the letter? Was it the Menudo confession? What was it that put you over the top to make?
No, what it was is I was evaluating the arguments that were being made within my office, both pro and against the release.
DA, can I ask you?
Hold on, I had it.
A lot of phone calls from
Yeah.
people
Gascón,
that
I'm, you have made resentencing a cornerstone of your tenure as district attorney here in Los Angeles. There are some people who have accused you of using this very, very highly publicized, clearly case to use it for politics, given how close we are to the election. What's your response to people who have been making that claim?
There's nothing political about this. We have resentenced over 300 people, including 28 for murder. And we will continue to resentence people in the future. And that's all I can tell you.
But DA, question,
Yes,
how
sir.
is your bid for
Excuse me, please. You're interrupting.
Everyone's interrupted. I'm just wondering how your bid for re-election.
Yes, please. Yes.
Could the brothers be home by Thanksgiving?
I don't know the answer to that.
Why did you decide not to go with the reduced voluntary manslaughter?
That was part of the process that I was still going through up until a couple hours ago. I don't believe that a manslaughter would have been the appropriate charge given the premeditation that was involved in the murders. I believe that these were clearly murders that were premeditated. Now the motivation, that's where differences of opinion come up, but I don't think it would be appropriate to go all the way down to manslaughter.
DA,
Yes,
has your bid for re-election?
Would you please stop? I am not going to talk about re-election, okay?
Okay. So
You want to talk to re-election? Go outside. We'll talk later. Please.
Relax.
¿Podría decir en español mañana?
I'm sorry, you're interrupting, sir.
Be respectful.
Please.
¿Qué va a pasar mañana después de que presenten en la corte los documentos?
Pues depende, como estaba explicando la abogada, la encargada de esta unidad, la corte probablemente va a señalar otro día donde los dos, la defensa y nosotros podemos ir y habrá una evaluación de la evidencia. Si hay alguien que se opone a esta moción que estamos, este proceso que estamos iniciando, también la Corte va a poder oír todo eso y la Corte toma la decisión final.
Did your office announce the press conference before you made your decision?
Yes, because we're going to make a decision one way or the other. It's just a question what the decision is
Was
going to be.
that just giving you a timeline to work
If you
with?
are no longer in office, what happens to this case? Could a potential successor undo what you're about to file?
I don't think so. Once it's filed, it's filed. It's up to the court to take it from there.
You mentioned...
Yes, I'm sorry.
In a parole situation, obviously you've had a policy of just not sending DDAs to those. Since you were obviously supporting the push for release here, how would that work? Would people from post-litigation, resentencing, would they go before the parole board to argue for their release? Or that
No. We have a policy that we only send victim services advocate if the victim or the victim's family wants that support. We don't send lawyers to our parole boards to relitigate a case. The parole board is fully aware of what the initial crime was, the crime that led to the conviction. Their work is primarily to evaluate whether they're rehabilitated and safe to be released, and that will be the way here.
Can you break down the timeline for us? Can we expect a hearing by the end of the year, or do you know when we might hear something on the books?
I'm hoping to get it on calendar, depending on the defense preparedness. I'd like to see it go to hearing probably within the next 30 to 45 days at the most. There's not much to argue because we're kind of a collective.
Okay, there's one more question, please, but related to the case, not to elections. If you want to talk about elections, we'll do that.
Related to the case.
Yes, sir.
What would you like to say right now to Erik and Lyle Menendez?
What we like to say to them, and it's we, because it's not I've made the final decision, obviously, but we have a whole team that worked on it. We have a family here that wants to be reunited, is that we appreciate what they did while they were in prison. while I disapprove of the way they handle their abuse, we hope that they not only have learned, which appears that they have, but that if they get reintegrated into our community, that they continue to do public good.
Yep.
Thank you so much, everyone.
I want to know what you think. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Alright guys, that is it for me. Thanks for your support, and talk to you soon.